Everyone thought he was just another struggling coffee vendor trying to survive in New York. But when he stepped toward a grand piano in front of hundreds of strangers, no one expected that the man they had ignored for years was about to change the entire atmosphere with just a few notes. At sunrise, the city wakes before he does. The coffee vendor stands beside his small cart on a Manhattan sidewalk, watching yellow taxis slide past while steam rises from the vents like little ghosts in the cold air. He has learned to greet the day with tired hands and a quiet heart, because every morning begins the same way: work, waiting, and a hope so small only he can feel it. By the cart, he counts a few dollar bills and loose coins as if they might somehow stretch into more. His rough fingers move slowly, careful and familiar, while strangers pass without stopping. The cold morning air bites through his faded shirt, but he keeps his face calm. He has seen better days, yet something in him still believes that even the smallest profit can carry a man through the night. In his tiny rented apartment, the noise of the street fades into silence. The walls are worn, the paint is peeling, and unpaid bills sit on the table like an unspoken burden. He drops into a chair beneath the dim lamp and stares at the room as if it belongs to someone else. Here, alone with his thoughts, the weight of survival feels heavier than the cart outside ever could. He looks at the framed family photographs and lets memory do what words cannot. The cheap coffee mug, the old radiator, the quiet room, all of it holds the shape of a life that once felt warmer. His eyes soften as he studies the faces on the wall, and for a moment, the loneliness gives way to remembrance. Some dreams do not disappear. They only wait patiently in the dark. Across a bright Manhattan plaza, a wealthy entrepreneur in a tailored black suit announces a public piano challenge beneath glowing lights and towering buildings. The grand piano shines like a promise no one believes in yet. The coffee vendor stands at the edge of the crowd, unnoticed, listening to applause and curiosity rise around him. Something in the air changes. It is not hope exactly. It is the sound of possibility. Back beside his cart, he hears people talking about the challenge, their voices rising and falling over the hiss of steam. He pauses, pretending not to listen, but every word finds him anyway. The stage lights glow in the distance like another world entirely. He studies the crowd with thoughtful eyes, as if trying to understand why his heart has started beating differently all of a sudden. On the walk home, he carries a small grocery bag and the tiredness of a whole day in his shoulders. The Manhattan street stretches ahead in long shadows as the sun falls behind the buildings. Yellow taxis blur through the evening, and the city begins to glow. He walks slowly, not because he is lost, but because he is thinking about what he has heard and what it might mean. Back in the apartment, he sits with his hands folded, silent beneath the soft lamplight. The bills remain unpaid, the room still small, the radiator still old and loud. Yet something has changed inside him. He is no longer only a man counting coins. He is a man standing at the edge of a choice. And in the stillness, that choice begins to breathe. At the plaza, the first contestant walks away in frustration, and the crowd watches with uneasy faces. The polished piano sits under the lights, untouched for a moment, while the entrepreneur keeps his confident smile. The coffee vendor remains near the back, quiet and uncertain. He does not belong here, not by appearance, not by money, not by status, but his eyes stay fixed on the stage, as if something is calling him forward. Then the second contestant fails too, stepping back in anger as the crowd falls into silence. The wealthy man watches with a look that says the challenge is real, and the room has begun to understand that. The coffee vendor stands at the edge of the crowd, his tired eyes reflecting curiosity, caution, and something deeper. He is not thinking about winning. He is thinking about whether a forgotten dream can still be reached. People start whispering, and a few even smirk, while he stands near the stage with all of them watching. The piano waits behind him like a test of identity, not skill. He feels their doubt, but he does not let it harden him. His face holds discomfort, yes, but also endurance. He has carried heavier things than judgment. Still, the silence around him feels sharp, like the moment before a storm. He stands motionless, one hand slightly raised, as if some memory has just touched him. The crowd blurs behind him. The billionaire watches quietly, and the grand piano gleams under the lights. For a breath, he is somewhere else entirely, standing in a life he once imagined but never reached. Fear says stay back, memory says move, and between those two voices, his heart begins to choose. His jaw tightens. His eyes lock on the grand piano. The fear is still there, but now it shares the room with something stronger: determination. The crowd goes quiet in a way that feels almost sacred, as if everyone senses the moment before it breaks open. Under the warm stage lights, he looks less like a vendor and more like a man remembering who he used to be before life taught him to stay small. He steps toward the piano stage, and the crowd begins to part without a word. His rough hands are visible now, no longer hidden by distance or doubt. The wealthy entrepreneur turns, surprised by the courage of the man walking forward with nothing but nerve and memory. The suspense hangs in the air like a held note. Every step he takes feels heavy, but also honest, as if something long buried is finally rising. At last, he stands before the grand piano, with his hands hovering above the keys. The whole audience has gone silent. Even the lights seem to wait. His weathered face glows under the warm stage glow, and for one fragile moment, the city around him disappears. There is only the piano, the breath in his chest, and the life he has carried to this point. And just before the first note, the world feels ready to change. The city keeps moving, but he takes that one careful step toward the stage like it costs him something. His work boots brush the pavement, the crowd stays quiet, and the man in the expensive suit watches from behind the lights. For a moment, the coffee vendor looks less like a stranger and more like someone standing at the edge of a life he never expected to enter. He stops near the piano, rough hands hovering above the keys, as if he is asking permission from a dream he has carried too long. The crowd remains silent. The wealthy man studies him with curiosity, and the stage lights shine down on a face that has spent years surviving, not shining. Everything feels suspended, as if the next breath could change his whole story. His fingers finally touch the piano keys, gentle at first, almost uncertain. Around him, the crowd freezes, waiting to see whether this man belongs here or not. The warm lights catch the tired lines in his face, but his hands stay steady enough to begin. In that first touch, something old and buried starts waking up inside him. He closes his eyes for one breath, not to hide, but to remember. The crowd blurs behind him, and the man in the suit keeps watching closely, as if sensing that this moment is becoming bigger than a challenge. When he opens his eyes again, the hesitation is still there, but now it shares space with something stronger, quieter, and far more dangerous than fear. The first soft notes leave the piano like a whisper no one expected. A few people in the crowd lean forward, surprised by how delicate the sound is. His tired blue-gray eyes stay fixed on the keys, and for the first time, the room begins to listen instead of judge. The quiet shock on the nearby faces tells him this is no ordinary mistake. It is the beginning of something real. His hands tremble slightly, but the second line comes out stronger, and his shoulders begin to relax. The music grows under his fingers, and the silence around him changes shape. No one speaks, no one moves. Even the man in the suit seems to understand that the vendor is no longer testing the piano. The piano is being tested by him. The confidence arrives slowly, almost against his will, but it arrives. The billionaire smile fades in the background, and a woman in the front row covers her mouth, unable to hide her surprise. The man at the piano is still wearing the same faded shirt and worn jeans, but something in his face has changed. He is no longer asking to be seen. He is beginning to take up space. Now he is fully inside the performance, calm and focused, moving through the notes as if the music has been waiting for him all along. The room softens around him, and doubt starts turning into awe. Faces in the audience shift one by one, from disbelief to wonder. Under the warm light, he looks less like a vendor from the sidewalk and more like a man remembering who he was before life got loud. He reaches the difficult part of the piece, and for 1 second, his jaw tightens. The crowd stays perfectly still, holding its breath with him. The wealthy man straightens in surprise, realizing this is no lucky accident. The tension feels heavy, almost sacred, because everyone can sense it now. This is the moment where talent either breaks or rises clean through the fear. His hands move smoothly across the keys, and the harder passage comes alive instead of collapsing. The room reacts in silence, as if no one wants to interrupt what is happening. The warm stage lights catch every movement of his fingers, every shift in his tired face. What once looked impossible now feels natural, and that change is enough to leave the whole crowd stunned. He brings the final notes home with a kind of stillness that makes the room feel even quieter. The soft glow around him feels almost like sunlight after a storm. No one speaks after the last sound. The audience freezes in that beautiful pause that follows something unforgettable. His face holds the calm of a man who has just crossed a line he once thought was too far away. Then the applause begins, and he sits quietly at the piano, as if he is still trying to understand that it is really for him. His expression is calm but overwhelmed as the crowd starts clapping around him. The wealthy man stands nearby, no longer above the moment, only inside it. For the first time, this tired vendor looks like someone the world has finally decided to notice. After the performance, he looks down at his rough hands, as if they belong to a different life. A child in the crowd smiles, while an older man stares in disbelief, still trying to process what he has just seen. The applause continues around him, but his silence says everything. Those hands once carried coffee, bills, and burden. Tonight, they carried something far bigger. He steps away from the stage with a lighter expression, and the billionaire nods in respect as the applause begins to fade. The air feels different now, softer somehow, as if the room itself has changed its mind about him. He does not walk like a winner in the usual sense. He walks like a man who has been given back a part of himself that the world had forgotten to return. By dusk, he is walking home through a quiet city street, and the night feels gentler than it did before. In his mind, the small apartment appears like a memory, with its old radiator, cheap coffee mug, and faded family photos waiting in the dim light. But now those things do not feel like defeat. They feel like the place where his life was always leading him, all along.